fixer-uppers and how you can snag yourself a good one, some of the challenges, some of the problems that you can avoid, and some of the benefits that you might reap from buying a fixer-upper and fixing it up yourself possibly. And that will be the topic of the discussion today. And I'm really glad that you have tuned in. I'm going to get my discussion topics ready here for just a moment. Also, a couple other shows coming up that I wanted to just mention to you briefly, some of the things I'm researching. And one of them is I actually have some land that I'm working on either trying to sell or do something with that I recently got at a tax foreclosure here in town. And we're going to get to the fixer-upper topic here in just a moment as well. But I actually have some land that I have purchased a while back here in Chatham County. And my idea was to lease it to maybe a company that will put a cell phone tower on it or some sort of other public communications device or something like a broadcasting tower or a radio station tower, something like that. It's a little bit outside the city. So it was a wooded area, an uncleared lot, which was actually a double lot, pretty good size. And so my thought was, hey, why don't I just call a couple of the companies out there that have cell phone service, T-Mobile, maybe Sprint, maybe AT&T, some of the other ones, Verizon, and find out what the process would be. And I kind of researched that from my lot and also kind of share that information with you right here on the radio in case you had maybe you were in a similar situation or had a lot or something else that you were thinking of doing the same thing with. So what I did is I did just basically a Google search. Google starts everything for me, and typed in cell phone leases, cell phone tower leases, or land leases is what they're called, and found a whole bunch of information. I did this a couple weeks ago and kind of requested to get my lot added to their databases. So usually what you'll find is a website that will ask your information, like your contact information and maybe the coordinates of your lot, of course, the longitude and latitude. And that was actually my question, even how to find that for my lot. I know, of course, the map number and the address, but coordinates of my lot, have no idea. So we're in dark waters here swimming, trying to figure out our way to the light here, to the air. So I did put in my information, eventually found that information about the coordinates, put that information into some of the databases that are out there, and kind of just sat tight and waited for somebody to contact me to see what would happen. And sure enough, one of the companies did contact me. I'm going to share that experience with you a little bit. I'm not going to name the name of the company because apparently we have had a little bit of a discussion with them. In fact, first I got a very nice email from one of their representatives and said, thank you for registering your property. We're going to get back with you once we have some interest and all of that. And the way it works, we're going to add your property to our landlord-friendly databases. And then when the cell phone tower companies or broadcasting stations or radio stations have a need, they contact us, and then we dip into our databases to see if we can find any friendly landlords, basically, that are willing to lease their land to maybe a new construction of a new cell phone tower or a broadcasting tower, and we'll get in touch with you. So, and that was pretty standard. You know, you ask a question, somebody answers you, but then I actually went back and asked a couple more questions. And this is when I got a little bit of a wall built, which was kind of surprising to me. And I don't know if you listeners ran into any of this or you maybe have some other experiences. So I'm just going to share with you what exactly they actually has said. And the kind of information that they gave me was basically that carrier like Verizon, for example, will send them a general location that they need a tower. And after they get the location, they analyze the area and find a landlord owner in the area willing to lease the land to us for a tower. And I think that this company that I was speaking to specifically were also in the business of contracting the construction of the tower as well as managing the relationship between the landowners and the companies that want to have a tower there. So this company that I'm speaking of, that shall remain unmentioned here because they requested not to be mentioned by name, they keep a list of locations from people who have contacted them about leasing their land, and every time a carrier sends us locations they would like a tower, we look to see if we have any landlords in the area that have contacted us about leasing their land. If you'd like, I can add your property to the list, and I can run an analysis to see if we have any current carriers interested in the area right now. All we need is the coordinates of the land or address to add it to our database. Also, if you have any other relevant info that may be useful. And so that was simple but easy, but I had a couple more questions, obviously. I kind of like poking around and asking them. And I was transferred to several different people and got a lot of, I don't know, maybe they weren't very helpful. Maybe the opposite of helpful would be probably the best way to describe it. And they really didn't want to inform me of any information other than what I just read to you all here, dear listeners. They just didn't want to talk about their strategies or marketing goals. They didn't want to even tell me I'm going to be added to a database. Is this like an MLS database? Or is this a database that's shared between different companies that do this kind of work all over the country? Are you all over the country? Are you local to an area? This specific company was actually located in Florida. Or do you actually have databases with friendly landlords all over the country? And then my second question was, of course, once you have that information, what else do you do with it? Do you sell it to anybody? What kind of other things do you do with this information, and who gets this information? And of course, then I had very specific questions. Is like, okay, maybe I have a disgruntled relationship with one of the broadcasting companies, or maybe don't like a specific cell phone company. Is there a way that you can exclude my property to be presented to those companies that I don't want to do any business with? And I want to say I was transferred first from a sales rep, then to his supervisor, then to a marketing lady, and finally to a PR company. And of course, throughout this time, I was very transparent about who I work for, that I work here at the radio station, and I just was gathering some information about this, and that maybe other homeowners would like to have this information as well. And I had a lot of, they weren't very friendly in giving me any information. So in the end, the last person that I spoke to last Friday asked me to write all my questions in written form so that they can forward it to whichever parties that they wanted to forward it to get the answer. And I'm going to read to you guys the questions that I sent to them that I'm waiting for an answer for. I haven't gotten an answer yet, but this is probably going to spill over into another one of my shows here on Real Estate Real Talk. So here are my questions that I had. Number 1, once I submit my property information into your database, who has access to information exactly? As you know, even property records have personal data of the owner, and a lot of information can be deduced searching local government websites once someone receives the basic information. So I would like to know who sees this information, how long is it in your database, what do you do with it, how can I erase the information from your database when I no longer want to offer my land? My question number 2 was, you said you've worked with all major cell phone carriers and broadcast carriers. Is there a listing you can provide me on who they are? And that way I know who my information may go to. Also, can I exclude myself from being available to any of them if I choose, or does signing up with you constitute approval that my land will be presented to all of them? Third question, is there a nationwide list, or do companies like you all have their own lists? Fourth, what are my benefits as a landowner using your company versus contacting all the major cell phone companies and broadcast companies myself, other than the fact that you stated that you have established relationships with them? Is there another tangible benefit, such as do you build towers, and do you provide any kind of cash out or anything like that? For the lease, that is, like maybe a lump sum for a 10-year lease or something like that. So is this more like a financing question? My fifth question was, I'm not asking about your sales strategy or how you earn your money as a company, but you had actually mentioned to me that is a conflict of interest when I previously asked these questions. Can you elaborate where this conflict of interest exists? I do not understand why or where there is a conflict of interest. And as a side note, my radio show is not owned by any broadcasting company. We're a very small volunteer nonprofit community radio station here, WREU, which is not aired nationwide, but only in the Savannah, Georgia area. And I gave her our website and where our funding comes from and everything else. Very transparent here. And my last question was, is your company publicly traded? And if so, where can I get your financial statements? If it is not publicly traded, which state are you incorporated in, so I may research your company some more? So these are the questions that I sent to this company that was helping homeowners, or landowners in this case, to establish or basically get them together with cell phone carrier companies and broadcasting companies to lease their land to them to build towers. And these are the questions that I had a little bit of walls built around giving me these answers, very specific, basic questions. If you have any input on this, or maybe you've worked for one of these companies and can maybe explain to me and the rest of the Savannah listeners here why they are so difficult in giving me these answers, please let me know. I'd love to hear that. This is still a topic I'm still researching, and you can always contact me at realestate@juliamspencer.com. I look forward to hear from you. And you can also reach me on my website, juliamspencer.com. And of course, I am also available through all the social media channels. All you have to do is just search Julia M. Spencer there. And hopefully I'm going to get my music resolved here and take a little bit of a break and actually get to the topic, the main topic of discussion here for today, which we were going to talk about fixer-uppers and some of the watch outs, challenges, issues, things that you need to watch out for to get yourself a really, really good one. And in the meantime, I'm going to play you a song. Hopefully I can play it here, and we will be right back after that. Some Sky High here, Ethereal. This is Julia M. Spencer. Thanks for having tuned into Real Estate Real Talk with myself as your host until this 1 p.m. hour today here on a Wednesday. I'm really glad that you're here with me listening to WREU. If you're local here to Savannah, hi to all of you. If you're tourists or visiting or just a guest to our beautiful city, welcome, welcome, welcome. And our show right here focuses on anything and everything related to real estate investing. I kind of snagged the first couple minutes here just to tell you a little bit about my experience with trying to find somebody who will lease my vacant, unimproved land, also uncleared as of yet, to get somebody to put maybe a cell phone tower or something on it and maybe snag myself like a long-term lease and maybe make some money off my unimproved land, basically land leases. And some of the questions that I've came up with and sent to some of the companies that manage these relationships with the cell phone tower carriers and broadcasting companies that build these kinds of towers on pieces of land, and how that whole process even works. So that was kind of like my first part of the discussion. But the main topic of this show, we're going to be talking about how to find a great deal, how to find a fixer-upper. Of course, if you're like most people, you're cursed with champagne taste and a beer budget. And the homes you hunger for cost far more than you can afford. So to buy one of these dream homes, you either have to get a really, really good deal or win the lottery, but can also find a good deal by snagging yourself a really good fixer-upper. And I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that you need to watch out for in case that is your plan. And as we speak right now, I do have a fixer-upper here in this town that I'm working on, either selling or fixing. Don't quite yet know for sure. We're trying to weave through the layers of the things that need to be fixed and kind of just even establishing the scope. So I very much can relate to this topic here today. So let's talk about it. So good deals. And by the way, a lot of my information comes from my book that is called Home Buying for Dummies that I've been reading in the last couple of weeks. So I snag little pieces and bits out of that book and talk about them from the perspective of a experienced real estate investor here in this town. So good deals, they are out there. The trick is knowing where to find them and how to evaluate them. And that is very true. Evaluation is key. Don't waste time looking at perfect houses if you're searching for a deal. People pay premium for perfection. The houses you find great deals on are imperfect properties, houses with either physical or financial problems. The deal you're offered is an inducement to tackle the problem. Whether the deal is ultimately better for you or for the seller, that's really the question. So let's talk a little bit about the strategies for getting a good buy in any type of housing market. So finding a fixer-upper. Fixer-uppers basically are rundown houses with physical problems. Real estate agents generally refer to fixer-uppers as needing work or having great potential. So dear listeners, listen up. If you see a MLS listing that says in the description, this house needs work or has great potential, you probably know it's a fixer-upper right there. So this is kind of translation, real estate agent translation here for you, for the regular person. So fixer-uppers aren't very popular in sluggish real estate markets. Most buyers in such markets don't want to put up with the hassle of financial uncertainties associated with doing a major rehab. They prefer to buy houses in move-in condition. Such a house is a safe but passive investment. Because its potential has already been fully realized, the new owner can't do anything to significantly increase its value. So fixer-upper, on the other hand, offers potentially larger rewards to folks who have the vision to see beyond the mess that is the wonderful home that it could be. Fixer-upper buyer must also have the financial resources and courage to tackle the risks. And not just courage, you need a lot of time. Take that from me here personally. If you fit that profile, here's what you may be able to look forward to after you've transformed your ugly duckling into a swan. And I'll call them my black sheeps. I don't call them ugly ducklings. I guess I should, but I got black sheeps. So anyways, you'll be living in a nicer home in a better neighborhood than you'd otherwise would have been able to afford once you finish your project, of course. Instead of buying a home decorated in someone else's idea of good taste, your home will be done the way you like it. That's pretty much always true when you start from scratch. And you may have increased your home's fair market value in excess of your out-of-pocket expenses for improvements you made. And the key word here, of course, is may. We all have seen the home improvement and flipping shows there on TV by these very inexpensive fixer-uppers. They walk through it once or twice, and the ladies involved in these projects have high heels walking through these houses, and I just cringe. I have to turn off those shows, honestly. They have $1 million budgets, and the discussion is mostly, should I have this color tile or this color tile? It's like, it's not like that in the real world, though, listeners. In the real world, we're making decisions of, okay, can we upgrade this plumbing issue to fix this house so it actually works, versus do we have to kind of just fix what's there and tackle that problem later on after we fixed the electricity and replace new windows and fix the huge roof leak. So problems are a little bit more significant than what you see on TV. And a lot of times, of course, you have the universal 3 issues, 3 iron fixer-upper work, 3 iron laws, I call them basically. It's always more disruptive than you expected to tackle a fixer-upper project. It always takes longer to finish than you planned, and it always costs more than what you estimated. In fact, I tell everybody that does a flipping project to factor in at least 20 to 25% extra from their initial estimates added together, and then you might get an accurate assumption or an accurate number of how much it's going to cost for you. A lot of people also have a really hard time estimating the time that it takes to get something finished. It's not just your time, but also the time of all the contractors and how you can fit them together in a schedule. It's a big project to do a major rehab, and it's not for the faint of heart, basically. So that's some of the things that I wanted to talk about. My name is Julia M. Spencer. You just tuned into Real Estate Real Talk here on WRUU. Thank you for being with us. And I am talking today to you all about fixer-uppers and some of the things that you can think about if you're planning on getting into the fixer-upper business, or the flipping business, I guess. And also taking some of my information here on today's show from the book Home Buying for Dummies that I picked up a while back. I'm kind of reading a few sections here and there and kind of discussing them as I put my experience together with what is written here. And for this particular segment, we're going to be talking about how to find a diamond among the dumps. So finding the right fixer-upper isn't a matter of luck. On the contrary, it takes persistence, skill, and plain hard work. And let me tell you about work. I spent yesterday or the day before, we had an auction here in Chatham County for tax sale foreclosures. And literally on Monday, I spent 12 hours researching properties. There were initially 130 on the list. When I got down to the basic few that were of interest to me, they were, and after a lot of them have already been paid off by Tuesday morning, there were only 38. That's still a lot of properties to go drive to in and around Chatham County, and especially in a morning. So it's been a really busy last 2 days. So yes, it takes a lot of work to find a good fixer-upper. So don't underestimate the fact that, hey, I'm going to find a deal. And it takes that kind of work persistently over many months, many years. And you might end up with a few in return that are very lucrative, but you have to put in the work, and there's just no way around that. And you spend lots of time tromping through properties, obviously, invest more precious time evaluating promising fixer-uppers that ultimately don't make sense economically. And then just when you're ready to give up, you finally discover a diamond in the rough that you end up buying. And sometimes you don't even know it's a diamond in the rough until you remove the weeds. I just got one fixer-upper here a couple of weeks ago. We cleared finally the legal paperwork. Nobody wanted to look at it. Nobody wants to buy it because you can't actually see it from the street. There has been 4 years of vegetation growing in and around and through the windows and up on top of the roof. There was no way to get inside the front door because there was just so much vegetation. So for certain, the diamonds are out there. This is going to be a really good property once it's finished, but we got to dig our way through it, and it requires a lot of work. So how do you find these diamonds in a rough? How do you find them? Well, other than work, of course. And this book right here recommends to read books, to get educated. And listening to this radio show is a great advice that I can give you. Getting your information out there on social media or finding maybe a mentor that can help you. All of these are good sources. You have to learn also how to evaluate neighborhoods, of course, and how to do property inspections, and also how to evaluate the costs of a specific project. And all of that, you can't just gain it from thinking of it. You have to actually educate yourself. There's really just no way around finding somebody that can help you, or reading a lot, or watching YouTube videos, whatever it is that you do. Maybe signing up for a program where they have like a pre-made package that teaches you how to do all of that. If you may remember, I had some guests here previous on my show from Emmaus Properties that have bought into a kind of like a package deal that teaches them and sets them up in business for flipping or property rehabs, which was a really great thing if you really didn't know where to start and needed that help. And of course that costs money. That's not free. But you have to do something. You can't just start from scratch. You're going to be wasting a lot of time and a lot of money, and it's going to be very frustrating. Another thing, how to find a really good diamond in the dump, is inspect the heck out of the fixer-upper before you buy it. Every property should be carefully inspected prior to purchase. Fixer-uppers need even more scrutiny so that you know precisely what you're getting yourself into. Even then, folks out here in Savannah, some things you just won't be able to see until you actually start the work. Let me just give you a case in point, and this was given to me by another investor, is they started basically wanting to rip or replace some drywall. Once they opened the drywall, they realized that the underlying wood structure of a specific wall had rotted or had been eaten by termites so badly that pretty much that whole wall had to be replaced. Those things you can't see until you actually open up the wall and see what's under it. So you have to also not just inspect the property properly, you also have to factor in any kind of additional costs that you might not be able to see until you actually open up to see what's there. And your purchase offer must, of course, be conditioned upon your approval of the property inspections and satisfactory resolution of corrective work issues you discover. A lot of the times you don't have any kind of right to inspect the property, especially if you do tax sale foreclosures. One of the things that I do, there's no access right to the property or any kind of possession or trespassing rights to a property. There might actually still be tenants living there when you purchase it at the auction. The same goes with bank foreclosures, same thing. And so you kind of have to wage your risk, kind of like evaluate your risk. If I'm going to invest into a couple of these houses and they're all fixer-uppers, my goal is to get 3 or 5 of them, and hopefully I can wholesale most of them and keep one and use the proceeds from the other one to fix that one. And you kind of keep your pipeline going that way, that hopefully within a couple of years or so you have a little portfolio of cash generating or rent generating properties that will support you in the future. That's kind of like the goal, to build up your system and your pipeline that way. And last but not least, you need to also get contractors' bids for structural repairs and renovations. And let me talk to you a little bit here about the difference between structural repairs and renovations. If you're a home construction person, you're listening to the show, you know the difference. an investor may know it as well, but for a home buyer, I just wanted to just point that out, that work done on fixer-uppers falls into two broad categories. One is structural repairs and one is renovations. And renovations can then also be split up into regular renovations and cosmetic renovations. So structural repairs are changes you make to a property to bring it up to local health and safety standards. Such work can include foundation repairs, roof replacements, new electrical and plumbing system installations, window replacements, and so on. Things that cost big bucks but add relatively little value to the property. Ideally, you can get a credit from the seller to do some, if not all, of the necessary structural repairs. That's, of course, if you go through a regular sales process. Like I mentioned, if you're doing a foreclosure, there isn't going to be a seller to give you any kind of credit because you're coming up with cash to buy the property to begin with. So the less you have to take out of pocket for this corrective work, the more you have to spend on renovations. And renovations, of course, the second side of repairs here is actually increase a fixer-upper's value by modernizing the home. So remodeling an old kitchen, installing a second bathroom maybe, and adding a garage are a few extra examples of major structural renovations that make your home more functional, more pleasant to live in, and more valuable when you sell it, especially if you plan to remodel a kitchen or a bathroom. Those are pretty much the two areas of a home that will give you the most bang for the buck in terms of increased property value. So you're still not going to get 100% what you put in added to the value of the property in most cases, but it's fairly close. I would say maybe about 80% or so, depending on how much money you spend and how extravagant you get, of course. And that's just a general number, so don't take me by that. Don't quote me on that. And last but not least, we have cosmetic renovations. And those are things like painting, carpeting, landscaping, things like that. They also add value with far less expense and aggravation. And if you don't want to spend any money on these major renovations, you want to just find a fixer-upper that are just old and ugly, and they just need simple cosmetic work to fix it to make it look their best. So I guess what I would recommend, if you want to get into the rehab business and into the remodeling business, to start with a fixer-upper that needs only cosmetic renovations, and then kind of work your way up. Cosmetic renovations, then maybe renovations, general renovations, and then the structural repairs, which are types of houses that need that kind of work. So you need to be able to see, if you look at a fixer-upper, if you're evaluating them for purchase, what kinds of repairs, what kind of category that fixer-upper falls into. Of course, cosmetic renovations being the easiest ones. Regular renovations, the second easiest, the ones that need structural repairs. That's kind of like the way to divide your fixer-upper adventure here. So hopefully that was helpful for you. We have another 15 minutes left here on my show, Real Estate Real Talk. We're going to be playing a little bit more of a break song, and I'm going to come up with a couple more recommendations for you in case you're in the market to do a little bit of rehabbing or flipping. And you're listening to Real Estate Real Talk with Julia M. Spencer. Thanks for having stayed here on with me on WRUU. And today we're talking about fixer-uppers, some of the advice that I can give you from my personal experience on fixer-uppers, whether or not you should do it. And kind of the last segment here, I was kind of explaining the difference between structural repairs, major structural renovations, regular renovations, and cosmetic renovations, which is some of the, you need to know those differences when you look at a fixer-upper home and check to see if that fits within what you want to do in terms of whether you want to purchase it and how much money you have to calculate into purchasing that. Talk in my last segment here a little bit about taking over foreclosures. So to get a mortgage, you basically give the lender the right to take your home away from you and sell it to pay the balance due on the mortgage. If you don't make your loan payments, don't pay your property taxes, let your homeowner's insurance policy lapse, or do anything else that financially endangers your home. That's kind of like a given. But if that happens and you do not follow those rules, the legal action to repossess a home and sell it is called a foreclosure. So every year, hundreds of thousands of homes end up in foreclosure. These foreclosures often result from misuse of consumer credit, and in other cases, however, people just fall on hard times. They lose a job, experience unexpected healthcare costs, suffer a death in the family, or go through a divorce. You may have heard stories about people who got good deals buying foreclosures far below the property's appraised value. And in fact, some people who buy foreclosed property luck out. But for every lucky winner, there are many more people who don't profit or who actually lose money buying foreclosures. So I just wanted to emphasize to you, you need to be aware when you buy foreclosure, unless you have an expert on your team who will guide you through the entire foreclosure process from beginning to end. Don't even think about buying a foreclosure. Good advice from this book right here. And I second that advice, of course. If you buy a foreclosed home now, you'll most likely also buy the previous owner's problems. And here are some of the risks to ponder. Physical. Some homeowners react to the emotional devastation of a foreclosure with a scorched earth attitude. And believe me, I have seen that. If we can't have it, we'll make darn sure that nobody else wants it. So before leaving, they take appliances, light fixtures, cabinets, sinks, toilets, anything else of value. And in extreme cases, they break windows, pour concrete down kitchen and bathroom drains, rip wiring out of walls, uproot shrubs, cut down trees, or do anything else they can think of to trash the property. What if you're the high bidder for a sabotaged house at an auction of foreclosed properties? Lucky you! That's a little bit of a black viewing approach here, but I have seen people do this. In fact, I've seen tenants do this to my properties that I had to evict for non-payment of their rent. I think one story I can share here briefly before the end of my hour here is that some of my tenants came and actually dispensed the contents of a fire extinguisher all throughout my house, even though there was no fire, including inside all the appliances, the refrigerator, inside the washer and dryer, and inside all the air vents. So I had to clean that mess up. Yeah, sabotaging a home, bad thing. If you buy in a foreclosed home, that might happen to you, so just beware of that. And lenders usually won't let you inspect foreclosed properties prior to their auction, nor can you make your offer to purchase subject to getting a loan. The risk of buying a property that you can't first inspect greatly exceeds the possible reward. Yeah, I beg to differ with that. You can still get good deals, and most people will not take that approach to sabotage a home, but it's just something to keep in the back of your head if that's the kind of business that you're in, to be aware of that. Let's talk a little bit else about another risk, financial. Depending on which state the house is located in, a foreclosure can take anywhere from 4 months to over a year to complete. Suppose that you get what appears to be a good deal from people who are actually selling partway through the foreclosure process to avoid the stigma of foreclosure. What if these people lie about how much they owe on their mortgage and property taxes? What if they don't tell you about unrecorded mortgages, court judgments, or federal and state tax liens hanging over the house? One guess who's liable for debts secured by the property. Lucky you. And possession, of course, that's the last risk. Is suppose that after buying a foreclosure at an auction, you visit your new home and discover that the previous owners are still living in it with the last remaining possession, a shotgun. They have no intention of leaving peacefully. Who do you think will have the pleasure of evicting them? Lucky you again. So yeah, I mean, I can say these are probably all worst case scenarios, but again, it's always good to know what the worst case scenario is, so that in your head you can work out some sort of plan of how to deal with it. All of these issues can be dealt with. You can't maybe inspect a house from the inside, but you can from the outside. Financially, yeah, you need to get a lawyer on your side to research your property records, your deeds, or maybe even learn how to do that yourself. And possession, of course, you have to factor in the costs of eviction, doing it professionally, and maybe also through a lawyer, but you can also have the courts get involved so you don't have to do this by yourself and be faced with that shotgun. So in any case, those are some of the watch outs if you're looking to invest in a fixer-upper or a foreclosure. Again, I don't want to discourage you with my show to not go that route. I think it's been a very profitable route for me as a real estate investor here in the Savannah area. I think there's a couple or a lot of people that will agree with me. And definitely I'm very happy that a lot of people actually contacted me about my YouTube channel and some of the advice that I have given to them and the books that they've read, my ebooks, and have been very, very profitable in some of the decisions that they've made using my advice. So I'm very happy for that. So I don't want to discourage you. I just want you to be aware of some of the things that can happen. There's no way in the world to avoid all risks. All you can do is risk mitigation, and it's up to you to figure out how much risk you're willing to accept. And that brings us to the end of my show here, Real Estate Real Talk, here at WRUU. We have an awesome lineup for the rest of the shows here for the rest of the day. Right after me, I believe we have a new host. His name's Ben, who's going to present us with some awesome African music here on a Wednesday afternoon. And I hope you come back to listen to my show again. It's on Wednesdays at noon from about 12:06 p.m. till 1 p.m. every Wednesday. I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your week. Have a great Wednesday, everybody.
For your free guide to real estate investing, visit juliamspencer.com.